You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 23.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robyn Jackson.
Hey builders, welcome to episode 23 of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robyn Jackson, and today is kind of a follow-up to my last podcast where I talked about how to overcome burnout. Now, last time we talked about how the real reason that so many of us are burned out is not that we have too much work or that we are working long hours. The real reason is that typically we're operating outside of our zone of genius. And if you missed that episode, I strongly encourage you to go check it out. It's episode 22, and I'll link to it in the show notes. Now, today I'm going to deal with a slightly different obstacle. You see, a lot of people already know that they're operating outside of their zone of genius. They know they aren't doing the work that they were uniquely built to do, and that feeds their soul while they're serving other people. And yet, they're not really sure how to find their true calling. So today, I'm going to give you 6 questions that you can ask yourself to help you discover where your zone of genius lies. But before we dive in, I have 2 quick announcements. First, have you gotten your tickets to Builders Lab 2019 yet? Well, what are you waiting for? I mean, think about it. At the beginning of the school year, you were probably all excited about the plans that you'd made over the summer and all the goals that you'd set. And by now, some of that excitement has started to ebb. In fact, by now, life has probably gotten in the way, and you're probably not as far along on those plans as you thought you'd be. Well, you don't have to worry about that because there's still time for you to reach those goals this year. And that's why I really want you to come to Builders Lab 2019, because January is the perfect time for a reset. Now, this is not like a lot of the conferences that you may be used to, where you go, you get a ton of information, you get all excited and inspired, and then when you get back to school, life happens, and although you intend to do the things that you learned, they don't happen because you're slammed with all the stuff that went on while you were gone, and you just don't have time to implement. No, Builders Lab is a little different because at Builders Lab 2019, you're actually going to get some of the work done at the conference. We're going to spend 3 days building your Builder's Blueprint, which is basically a complete roadmap to achieving your goals this year. Not next year, not 2 years from now, this year. And on day 3, we're going to do an implementation lab where I'm going to walk you through how you're going to put all that you've learned into place in the next 90 days. Right there, we're going to get things on the calendar. You'll send emails. You'll set up meetings. We're just going to get everything in place so that when you go back to your school, you can hit the ground running. So it's not like you're really taking 3 days away from work by coming to Builders Lab 2019. It's more like you're taking 3 days to get your most important work done. And done in an environment where you can kind of step away, you can really focus, there aren't any distractions, and I'll be right there to coach you. So please, get your ticket to Builders Lab 2019 by going to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And I'll make sure that I put a link to it in the show notes. Okay, so second announcement is this. It's real quick. We are in the middle of the Jumpstart Your Education Consulting Business 5-day challenge, and there is still time for you to join. So we have had so far 3 incredible days of training where we've talked about how to figure out what kind of business you want to build, what kind of difference you want to make, and then figuring out who are your ideal clients and how do you get your business out? How do you go out and reach them and get in front of them and tell them about your business? And then how do you figure out what your unique branded delivery system is going to look like? What's your model? What's going to set you apart from all the other consultants out there? So we still have 2 more days of training, and you can definitely join that. And we're going to do a catch-up session session over the weekend so that if you still want to access all the training that you may have missed, you'll have time to do that and to get my feedback inside of the private Facebook group. So the whole goal of this challenge is that at the end of 5 days, you will have a complete roadmap to jumpstart your very own education consulting business. So here's what you need to do. You need to take out your phone right now and you need to text the words Jumpstart 2018, JUMPSTART 2018, all one word, to the number 33444. So that's texting the word Jumpstart 2018, one word, to the number 33444, and you'll instantly be signed up. Okay, now that we've taken care of all that business, let's get to what you really came here for, which is you want to know those 6 questions that you can ask yourself to help you discover your own zone of genius. Question number 1 is, if outside influences like money or bureaucracy weren't an issue, what would you most love to do? You know, I hear all the time from people who want to start their own consulting business or who want to pursue a different career inside of education. You know, maybe they're an administrator and they don't really like it and they want to go back to teaching, or maybe they are a teacher, but they don't feel like they're making enough money, so they want to pursue another position in the school district so they can make more money. Or maybe they're in central office and they want to go back to the classroom. But here's the thing. They're just afraid that if they do that, they're going to lose the money that they're making. You know, they've got bills, they've got financial obligations. They worry that if they leave the security of their job, that they're going to put their and their family's financial position in jeopardy. You know, for instance, right now, as I mentioned, I'm doing the Jumpstart Your Education Consulting Business 5-day challenge, and so many people are starting to actually be able to visualize their dream consulting business right now. And they're building that roadmap and they're getting so excited about the businesses that they're building. And they know in their hearts that this is the work that they really want to do. But you know where many of them are getting stuck? They're saying things like, what about health insurance? Or I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. I can't do that right now. Isn't that sad? They have this dream, and yet their dream is being held hostage by finances. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're dealing with the same thing. Well, in the challenge, on day 4, we're going to address this very thing, and I'm going to show them how to figure out the financial part and lay out a plan to transition from being employed to being an entrepreneur. So at least they have options. But it makes me really sad to think that for years they've been putting off their dreams because of money. And in fact, even though I'm going to show them how to do that in the training, a lot of them are going to say, no, because I want to buy a new Mercedes, or no, because, I don't want to have to, sacrifice the lifestyle that I've been building. Well, are you doing the same thing? Are you staying in a job only because it pays well? Then I want you to ask yourself, what if money were no object? Would you still be in the job that you are in currently? Now, another thing that I see is that I talk to a lot of school leaders. They know how they're in the right job. They're doing the work that they want to do, and they know how to help kids achieve. They have big goals and big dreams for their school. They know that their schedule should be different, or they know that class size should be smaller, or they know that they should be adding an extra teacher somewhere, or they should be using a particular program in their school. But then they say, I don't have the funding that I need to make these kinds of things happen. So year after year, they stay focused on doing the things that they know don't work, but believing that that's all they can do because they don't have the money to do the things that they really believe could work. And again, are you sustaining instead of building your students, your teachers, your school, because you don't think you can afford to do it a better way? How would you run your school if money were no object? Now, here's one more. I talk to people who are in a job they want. They are doing the work that they really want to do. And their problem isn't money. Their problem is the system in which they currently work. They have big goals and big dreams for their students. They know exactly what they need to do to achieve those goals, but they feel so restricted by the bureaucracy of their jobs that they just aren't moving. So Again, let me ask you, is there a rule or a policy that you feel is keeping you from doing what you really want to do and the thing that you really should be doing to build your school and to be the builder that you know you are called to be? How would you do your job differently if bureaucracy wasn't an issue? Now, here's why these questions are so important. You see, a lot of times we see the obstacles of money or bureaucracy, and they feel so real and so restrictive that we stop dreaming. And those rules, that bureaucracy, that lack of money becomes our new reality. And so what we start to do is we start to limit ourselves, and we start to limit the work that we're doing and the work that we know we're called to be doing. And we do that because we feel limited by bureaucracy or money, and we start to lose sight of the possibilities. The limit becomes our new reality. The limit becomes our new possibility, and that's all we can see. So just for now, imagine what you would do if those barriers didn't exist. I'm not asking you to do anything about those barriers yet, nor am I asking you to ignore them. The barriers are real. Sometimes you really do have bills and you can't afford to quit your job right now. But just for a moment, I want you to think about what would happen if you could. What would you be doing that you're not doing right now? Or what would you be doing differently if money weren't an issue or bureaucracy wasn't an issue? I want you to allow yourself to dream a little bit so that you can begin to reconnect with your zone of genius. Now, that was just question number one. That's an amazing question. But question number two is also just as important. And that question is this: what do you do that doesn't even seem like work? I mean, what could you do all day long without even thinking about it? Or what do you do now that you just can't help but do? You couldn't stop if you wanted to. You know, for me, I can't help but learn and tell others what I've learned. I can't help but hear something and automatically my brain starts probing, trying to figure out what's the root cause and then trying to figure out how to solve it. And so I'll listen to a new podcast or I'll read a new book. And then for the next week, I'm thinking about it. I'm telling everybody who will listen about what I've just learned, whether they want to hear it or not. I just can't help myself. I remember, a few years ago on my honeymoon, my husband and I were having lunch. And we were, it was in kind of this like divey place. And we struck up a conversation with the guys at the table next to us. And one of them mentioned that he'd always wanted to start his own business. And he started telling me all the obstacles he was facing. And before I could even help myself, I had mapped out his entire business on the back of a napkin. And my husband just sat there shaking his head because here we are on our honeymoon and I'm doing pro bono consulting work and coaching, but I just couldn't help myself. So what is it about you? What do you do? And you just can't keep yourself from doing. That's how you can start to recognize your zone of genius. What do you do without even thinking about it? I have a friend that we call our own personal Julie McCoy. And for those of you who don't know who Julie McCoy is, she's the cruise director on the Love Boat. I mean, come on. Now, if you don't know what the Love Boat is, I'm sorry, I really can't help you. But anyway, whenever we get together as friends, she cannot help but coordinate our activities and make sure that everybody has a good time. It's in her zone of genius. So I have another colleague who can't help but feed people. So you go to her home, the first thing she does is you need to eat something. She starts pulling stuff out the cabinet. She's not happy until you're completely comfortable. And in her classroom, she does the same thing. I wrote about her in Never Work Harder Than Your Students, the peanut butter and jelly story. She can't help herself. Now, I went and, if I went and bought peanut butter and jelly and tried to feed it to my students, people would say, I'm not eating that. I don't know where that came from. But because that's within her zone of genius, people accept it. That's how she makes people feel comfortable and well cared for. She can't help herself. So what are the things that you're doing right now that you can't help but doing? It doesn't even feel like work. Every day you go in, you do it on the weekends, you do it on holidays. You're not always watching the clock. When you are in that zone, you can be in the zone for hours and you don't even stop to look up to drink water or use the restroom. You're just in that zone. You can't help yourself from doing it because that gives you a clue as to your zone of genius. Now, question number 3 is this. In your work, what produces the highest amount of satisfaction and abundance relative to the time you spend doing it? You see, in our jobs, we all have different things that we're doing all day. When I was an administrator, I did the master schedule. I observed teachers. I gave teachers feedback. I did discipline with kids. I, monitored the halls. I coordinated with the custodial staff. I submitted paperwork for federal requirements. I interacted with my secretaries. I planned meeting agendas. I sat in on other people's meetings. You get the point. There's a ton of different things. But of all the things that you do every single day, what's the thing that you do where you get way more joy and abundance and satisfaction from relative to the time you spend doing it? In other words, you could do that one thing and then the whole rest of your day, you're just happy because you had a great conversation with a teacher, or you're just ecstatic because you were able to intervene in the life of a kid who was heading in the wrong direction and get that kid turned back around. Or you are so happy because you spent 2 hours grinding on that master schedule. And for the rest of the day, you're just smiling because you feel like you really conquered the world. For me, it was having conversations with teachers. I used to love it. I didn't love it at first. I had to figure it out. At first, I was using what the system told me to do, but that conversation always felt stilted and artificial. And when I finally figured out how to get to the root cause of a teacher's practice and shape the conversation around that, I began to really love those conversations. I might spend an hour in conversation with a teacher, and the rest of the day I'm running around and, nothing else goes right. And I still feel like I had a great day. What is that thing for you? Think about all the things that you do during the day. What's the thing that gives you the greatest joy? You might even want to think back to when you were a teacher. So when I was a teacher, you know what I loved? I loved two things. I loved planning lessons, really figuring out how to help my kids learn. I loved planning. But the other thing I loved was I taught students writing, and I loved sitting down with kids and helping them figure out how to make their writing better. I loved trying to tell them, okay, here's the root cause for why this paper is not working, and here's how to fix it. And then seeing them turn in the next paper and seeing their progress. That was the thing that I loved the most. It gave me the highest amount of satisfaction and the highest amount of abundance. So there's a pattern to my career, because even now in the work that I do, what I love the most is sitting down with my clients, helping them figure out the root cause of why something isn't working in their district, and helping them figure out how to deal with it and solve it for good. So you'll notice when you start thinking about this, what the pattern looks like throughout your career, and you'll begin to see these are the things that give you clues as to your zone of genius. So that was question number 3. Question number 4 is, what is your unique ability? In other words, when are you at your best? So, think about that. When I first started thinking about this for myself, one of the things that I thought about is, well, I'm great in conversations, but not all conversations am I great at. I can remember several conversations where, I jumped in and started talking and ended up inadvertently offending the person I was talking to. So it's not conversations. So then I started thinking about which conversations do I have that give me that joy, that are so successful. And I started focusing on them. What is the pattern? What's the difference between the conversations where I felt really successful, but also really fulfilled, and the conversations in which I didn't feel successful or fulfilled? And I started to notice a pattern. The conversations where we talk about things that are substantive, that get to the root cause, those are the conversations where I get the most satisfaction and fulfillment. And it's not just a selfish thing, because those are the conversations where the teachers get the most satisfaction and fulfillment. They feel hopeful. So it's not just that I love having conversations with people where I'm coaching them. My unique ability is that I can very quickly hear somebody talk about their issue, pinpoint the root cause, and then help them deal with the real issue. So I cut through all the nonsense and get to the real issue and get it solved. That's what my unique ability is. Now, a lot of us, we don't spend enough time thinking about our unique ability. We think, I don't want to be vain or conceited. You need to stop that. Because if you understand what your unique ability is, you can more easily and more effectively serve people. Plus, you understand, when are you at your best? What do you do? What do you do where you really, really shine? What is your zone of genius? And then you can begin to share that with the world instead of haphazardly stumbling across your zone of genius and not even realizing it because you haven't taken the time to really critically examine yourself. When are you at your best? And if you're not sure, if you can't figure it out, ask your colleagues, when am I at my best? Ask your loved ones, when am I at my best? And hear what they have to say. You'll start to hear a pattern emerge. And that's really important because question number 5 is, when you are at your best, what is the exact thing you are doing? Notice how we started out with kind of bigger, broader philosophical questions, but now we're really narrowing it in. What is the exact thing that you're doing? So I thought, I'm having conversations, and the conversations that really work are the ones we get to the root cause, and the ones that don't work as well are the ones we don't get to the root cause. So what's the exact thing I'm doing when I'm doing the root cause? And the exact thing I'm doing is I'm listening to people and I'm processing what they have to say, and I'm not distracted. So that means that when I have conversations, I try to make sure that I'm not distracted. I'm listening intently on what people have to say, and I'm processing what they have to say rather than just waiting for my turn to speak. Again, the more you can narrow in on your zone of genius, the more you can begin to incorporate it in your life, regardless of whether or not you are in your dream job, regardless of whether or not you're in the right circumstances for you at the particular moment. You can turn any job into a zone of genius job if you know what your zone of genius is, and you can begin to bring it to bear on your work, and it actually can cure your burnout and give you joy and satisfaction and fulfillment in your work. And that brings me to our last question, question number 6. When you are doing that thing that you are at your best doing, what is it you love the most about it? So I'll use myself as an example again. When I sit down and I can finally get to the root cause, when I really listen to somebody and I really get focused on them, I love a couple of things about it. One thing is that I love the connection. I love, being in synergy with another person. The second thing is I love getting it. I love the aha moment that I get myself and then I can bring somebody else to. I love when we can say, yes, this is it. I get a little, I get closure. I get satisfaction from that. And then the third thing is I feel like once you understand the root cause, your problem isn't as big of a problem anymore because now you know how to solve it. And so I love giving people hope. I love taking somebody who feels, who's not sleeping at night because they're up worrying about this thing. And I love giving them hope that this thing can now be solved. I like being a part of that. And it was true when I was a teacher. It's true whether or not I'm working in education or I'm doing something totally different in my life. That's the thing I love about it. That's the thing that gives me energy and gets me through the day. What's your thing? What's the thing that you love the most about doing what you love to do? And I want you to get down, not just like, well, I get really satisfied when I see the light bulb moment. What is it about the light bulb moment that's so satisfying for you? Oh, I love, doing a project and getting it completed. I love that feeling of completion. Why do you love that feeling of completion? I really want you to dig deep in this, and here's why. If you can understand what makes you happy, then you can begin to be intentional about putting yourselves in situations where you can be happy more often. You see, we're burned out because a lot of us are going through life and we're not being intentional about what we're doing. We know we have a zone of genius. Our bodies are telling us, sending us signals that we're not in the right work or we're not doing the right work the right way, and we just ignore it. If you start paying attention to it, if you start being intentional, this is what makes me happy. So this tells me these are the clients I can work with. I want to work with clients I feel like I can actually help. I want to work with clients where I feel like I can actually give them hope. I don't want to work with clients where I can't do that. It helps me pick the kinds of people I want to work with. So I make sure I'm working with people that I can actually help and that will bring me joy and that they'll get some joy and value from what I do. I don't want to do activities that are hopeless. I only want to work on activities that are going to be hopeful. And if I can't figure out how to make something to find the hope in the activity, it's really hard for me to get a lot of energy around that. So I need to be careful about the kinds of kind of work that I do, that I need to make sure that I'm working on in places where I feel like I can actually make a difference, or I'm not going to be happy. Once I understand that about myself, I can shape my life, both in my career and in my job and outside of it, to feed my zone of genius, to occupy my zone of genius. And when I do that, I get into that zone. Work doesn't feel like work. I'm still working hard, but it feels good. If you're going to work hard, shouldn't it feel good at least most of the time? If you're going to work hard, shouldn't you be doing work that you felt called to do, that you're satisfied doing? Otherwise, why are you doing it? So I really want you to spend some time with these questions this week, and I'll go over them one more time just so that you have them. Question number 1 is, if outside influences like money or bureaucracy weren't an issue, what would you most love to do? Question number 2 is, what do you do that doesn't even seem like work? Question number 3 is, in your work, what produces the highest amount of satisfaction and abundance relative to the time you spend doing it? Question number 4, what is your unique ability? In other words, when you're at your best, what are you doing? When are you at your best? Question number 5, when you're at your best, what is the exact thing that you're doing? So you're starting to pinpoint a little bit more. And question number 6, when you're doing that thing, what is it that you love the most about it? And by the way, these 6 questions come from the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And if you have time, I think it's a great book to read to really help you zone in on your zone of genius. All right. So that's it for this week. But before we go, I don't want you to forget to get your ticket to Builders Lab 2019, because it is a great way to take 3 days during the school year to get refocused, to get re-energized, to get reinvested, to make sure that you are still doing the right work, and to get re-energized around that right work so that you can still hit your goals this year. So if you've got a teacher who's being really resistant, well, we're going to help you figure it out. And I'm going to show you how to reach that teacher at Builders Lab and get her on board this year. Or, maybe you're starting to see signs of, toxicity in your school culture. Well, we're going to nip that in the bud at Builders Lab before it has a chance to derail your culture and, make the rest of your year really miserable. If you're having trouble getting the most important work done, well, we'll show you how to build systems so that you can get the most important work done without burning out at Builders Lab. Remember, Builders Lab is a small, intimate, intensive where you can get coaching and support and personal attention from me. And so it's a perfect place and a perfect time to really step away from your busy school schedule for a few days and just get some perspective and get some support while you still have time to implement the changes this school year. So if you don't have your ticket yet, you need to go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. That's mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And I'll make sure that I put a link to it in the show notes. And then don't forget too that there is still time to join the Jumpstart Your Education Consulting Business Challenge. Now, this is a pop-up group. It's only a 5-day challenge. I'll probably give everybody another week just to catch up. But the group closes down November 16, 2018. So if you want to join, you need to do it fast. Take out your phone, text the word Jumpstart 2018 to the number 33444. Now let's talk about next week, because I'm pretty excited about next week, because we're going to tackle an obstacle that I see that most school leaders face. We all know that we need to delegate, and that we need to be giving more tasks to other people, but either we're not sure how to delegate, or we've tried to delegate in the past and it hasn't worked. And so after a while, it just seems easier to do it yourself. But as long as you don't delegate, you're going to end up doing work that's outside of your zone of genius instead of spending the majority of your time doing the thing that you were uniquely designed to do. And that's going to bring you and others the most joy and the most satisfaction and the biggest amount of results. So next time, I'm going to break down how to delegate like a builder. You don't want to miss it. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.